So, welcome back. My name's Damien, and this month we will be discussing, sort of from a very basic point of view, I'm trying to sort of go right down to some very basic approach to life, and to, maybe under the theme of trying to be a better me. Trying to be a better me. So the point that I made last week was that the value of love and compassion, the value of patience, the value of generosity should be no mystery to us, right? And the way we can see the value of that is actually to look and to see in my own life. I can remember the moments when somebody's deep care and compassion for me was something of extremely great value to me because of the difficulties that I faced, or because of an illness or some other difficulty, either psychological difficulty or physical difficulty. In my own case, I can remember many years ago I had a burst appendix, and I can remember in the middle of the night this very small Indian nurse, trying her best to make me feel comfortable. And it is stuck in my mind ever since, that great sense of gratitude of somebody really trying to help you out of a sense of compassion. And so we should use those incidents in our lives to identify very clearly what compassion is, what love is, and to see. So the way we start with this is we see the benefit that I have received from love and compassion, and the benefit that I have received by somebody being very patient with me when I've been ranting and raving, angry, and then there's somebody has actually shown me patience. So to use those examples from your own life to really start to see a value in love and compassion, in patience, in generosity. Because I'm going to say here that it's not automatic that we think those things are valuable. I think we can say very clearly that this human's existence is very much has a disposition for love and compassion. The human being very much has a disposition for maybe even altruism. It had a disposition for love and compassion. Our whole society is pretty much based on harmony, relationships, companionship, and these are all expressions of love and compassion. But I would still assert that it's not automatic that we can express, that we value, that we even respect love and compassion. So, the sort of the process that I'm trying to outline here is that we can convince ourselves that love and compassion, patience, tolerance, generosity, as I was saying last week, non-harmfulness, non-jealousy, non-anger, non-arrogance, non-resentment, that those qualities also, we can start to find a way to really generate a respect and a value, seeing a real value in all of those qualities. So the question then is, how do we do that? And the process that I was starting to outline last week was just that very process of reviewing your life and trying to identify the moments where somebody has really expressed compassion, some real affectionate care and love and concern, and transform that into action, for my benefit. So I think we all have instances where that can readily come to mind. So I'm talking about it readily coming to mind. So what I'm hoping then is that we start to really see a value in love and compassion. We don't just dismiss them as some namby-pamby emotions that belong in the kindergarten or something, but not in real life. Real life is different. Not to have that attitude, but to really see a value for love and compassion. And like last week we discussed the observation that some people express that compassion is a sign of weakness. So here I'm asserting really that compassion is actually a sign of strength. And so for us to understand or to come to some logic or some process where we can feel that very, very strongly. So I recollect a moment of great compassion that somebody showed me, and I can see within myself the benefit that I obtained from that caring compassion. And so to try to transform that memory into so that I have a deep respect for the expression of compassion, that I start to familiarize myself and have the aspiration to be able to express that caring compassion for others. So I'm trying to use this logic here, that by remembering my own instances of compassion that was shown to me, that I then take that as an example and then try to use that as the instigator of my value, my sense of value, of love, of expressing compassion myself. So this is why I say that it's not automatic. It may not be automatic that we have a sense of value for love and compassion. We in society, there's quite a lot of factors that encourage us to abandon compassion for others. A lot of factors that encourage us to abandon patience for others, to abandon tolerance, to abandon the sense of dignity for others. There are factors in our society that encourage us to abandon that sense of care and concern for others. So, as a personal journey here, I'm recommending that we instead work at a very opposite approach, a very opposite direction, a very different cultivation of value, instead to cultivate a real sense of value for love and compassion, for patience, for tolerance, for generosity. So, why would we do that? This is a question that we maybe need to address, to be strong. Last week I talked about this idea of familiarize, that the way we can become a better person is for us to familiarize ourselves with the qualities that make us a better person. Familiarize ourselves with the qualities so that somebody who comes and sees us says, that's a good person. That's a person who behaves well, who is kind, who is considerate, and so that for that person I become attractive, I become worthy through valuing love and expressing, valuing and expressing love and compassion, patience, etc. So, why would we do that? This is a question to actually ask yourself. Why would I practice compassion? Why would I practice generosity? Why would I practice patience? And the stronger the answer that we have to that question, the more that we will actually then engage in a path or in a practice of developing love and compassion. But if we don't have a good answer for that question as to why would I do it, then we will have no energy. We'll have no sort of aspiration to really generate love and compassion, and to eliminate the faults of anger, arrogance, pride, etc., jealousy, resentment, aggression, competitiveness. Unless we have a really good reason, we won't make any effort in overcoming those conditions within ourselves. So there's several different means that we can generate that drive, the drive to want to cultivate these qualities. So it's not, and this again, I think, it's not automatic. It's not automatic that we have this sort of saintly approach to life. This is not a given. It's not a given that we're all a hidden Mother Teresa or a hidden Buddha just waiting to sort of come out of the shadows. That's not the case. We actually have to apply some effort and some logic that actually convinces us that path or that process is worth doing. So I think on a very basic level, this question of why would I show love and compassion to others? It's a very important question that internally to have a very strong answer for, to be absolutely clear within yourself. Why would I show love and compassion to others? And we could say that a great deal of the Buddhist logic and thought is to come up with good reasons why I should develop and express love and compassion for others. But even for us, walking down the street or whatever, it's still, Buddhism or no Buddhism, religious person, non-religious person, whatever, still that question is, why is it valuable for me to express love and compassion towards others? And really, we should have a good answer for that. Internally, we should have a very strong, good answer for that. So there's a couple of different approaches for us to get that answer. And so the first one is like what I was talking about before. I remember moments of great caring compassion that somebody has shown me, and so I see for myself the great value of that and the happiness of that. The happiness, that sense of gratitude, that sense of receiving that love and compassion from somebody else has a great happiness. And so even then, for our own happiness, we can start to convince ourselves that the expression of love and compassion is the source of a great happiness for ourselves. And then there's a related reason, and that's this practice of the cultivation of a mindset of repaying the kindness. So this approach is reliant upon recollecting and identifying the kindness that others have shown me. And in particular, from the Buddhist point of view, this is centralized around remembering the kindness of your own mother. And so on that basis, we start to generate a sense of gratitude and a sense then of the value of love and compassion. And certainly from a Buddhist point of view, that idea is extended very, very greatly beyond just your own mother of this life. But as a general practice in this society, we can readily practice this idea of remembering the kindness of others, and then out of a sense of gratitude generating a desire to repay that kindness. So we could say that this is a technique. You know, this is a technique. I'm in the supermarket, the person on the checkout counter, not the computer on the checkout counter, the person on the checkout counter, is enabling me to eat, to wash, to feed the cat, to, you know, to cook dinner, to replenish my body, to, you know, big 2-kilo box of lint balls, you know, some delight and pleasure there. You know, that person is enabling those experiences for me by selling them to me. And no matter what logic we might think about, it's their job, it's this, it's that, the bottom line is that I walk out of there with all of these things due to the kindness of the supermarket and the kindness of the person who served me. So sometimes you might dismiss that. You know, say, no, it's not, that's not kindness. That's not kindness. So that's a thought that has to be analysed. So here there is a challenge, you know, and we can. So we've got these two thoughts. That is kindness. No, that's not kindness. So we can, using our own intelligence and we can work through those two thoughts. You know, your own mother's care, carrying you, giving birth, looking after you or not looking after you, giving you what you want or not giving you what you want, you know, abusing you, swearing at you, hitting you with the wooden spoon, all of this, kindness or not kindness, we can analyse. And the reality is that if I come down to this bottom line here, my existence here, right now, in this body, is totally due to the kindness of my mother. And that's, so in the end there's this bottom line sort of thing that actually triumphs over any other harm or suffering or undesirable situation that occurred or whatever else, you know, and so that is something that has to be examined and ideally reflected on, and then a conclusion that yes, it is kindness. Same with the person serving in the supermarket or the supermarket itself, the roads, the mobile phone, the whatever, to cultivate a sense of that because I benefit from it, there is, in effect, it is kindness. So this is a logic that we can adopt. We can think through this and try to adopt this logic. Now, you may rile up against this logic and say, no, that's not true. That is absolutely not true. So the challenge that I would put to you is to recognise that you are making a choice between one mental state which can result in your development of love and compassion and a better life experience, happiness, joy, gratitude, and developing a real sense of care and concern for others, but to see that the alternative logic of denying the role of kindness in anybody else's behaviour towards you leads to a mental state of superiority, resentments, arrogance, ungratitude, despising others, you know, maybe even abuse, aggression, impatience. You know, that the two attitudes have very, very different consequences. So in a way, I'm not saying that one is right and one is wrong, but the point is we can analyse and see that the consequences of one are great for myself and for those around me, and the consequences of the other are very poor for me and very poor for others. And so that's something to check, that instead of necessarily pursuing what is absolutely right and absolutely wrong, we can look at the consequences of thinking one way or thinking a different way. And so if you're looking for something that gives you the absolute determination to cultivate love and compassion, then we can use this idea of examining the consequences of my thinking. That if my thinking is to value others, to respect their actions as actions of kindness, to develop a sense of gratitude, and then and in dependence on that, an affection, a wish to make them happy, a wish that they don't suffer, and then we can see that that whole consequence of thinking is beneficial both to me and to others. But on the other hand, the taking people for granted, the resentment, the arrogance, the superiority, the demand for servitude, you know, the demand that you're serving me, so smarten up your attitude and treat me with respect, you know, that sort of demanding that from somebody. So if we look at that whole package of attitudes, you know, that whole collection of you know, demanding servitude, arrogance, superiority, impatience, aggression, and we see the consequences of that state of mind for yourself and for others, then we can see that there's a difference. So really, independently of whether one is right and one is not right, or one view is absolutely correct and the other view is wrong, we don't even have to think about judgment like that. We can just look at the consequences of following that way of thinking and see how that works for yourself. So like last week we had a bit of a discussion talking about, you know, withholding generosity from somebody who you don't like, who's maybe misbehaving. And I was thinking about this during the week, you know, that the example is that there's somebody who's, you know, maybe they're beating their dog or something, and so you withhold from them generosity. With the thought, you know, with the logic that my withholding of generosity, my withholding of pleasantness or talking to them, that by that withholding they'll get the message and they will change their behaviour. You know, this sort of holding to ransom somebody, thinking, look, I'm not going to talk to you anymore, and you'll get the message that your behaviour has been unacceptable, and so then you'll realise that and you will change. You know, so the question is for us to check whether that method ever works. And I was thinking, there's probably a whole bunch of people out there that resolved not to talk to me 20 years ago, and now, 20 years later, they still haven't talked to me, but I'm none the wiser that somebody said, I'm not talking to him anymore until he gets the message that his behaviour is not acceptable. Well, 20 years later, my behaviour may or may not have changed. They're still not talking to me. You know, like, so we have to really think and analyse whether the methods that we choose sometimes, whether they actually work or not. You know, so this is, you know, the example I gave last week was like from what Geshe Doga had said, you know, that nobody misunderstands kindness. And I think it is such a key point to keep in mind. Nobody, not even dogs and cats and animals, misunderstand kindness. And I think it is such a powerful statement, and we should think about that, particularly when we try to hold other people ransom. Well, I'm not inviting them to my birthday party or the drinks on Friday night because I want them to get the message that their behaviour is unacceptable. Well, they may not get that email, you know. So that's really something to consider. That, you know, sometimes we have this sort of blackmailing mentality, and to really check whether it works or not. And nobody misunderstands kindness. I think that's such a key line to follow. So, how do we do this? You know, how do we actually do all this? And last week we were talking about this idea of familiarise myself with the value of love and compassion. Really convince myself that caring, compassionate attitude is something really valuable. And not only is it valuable for me when somebody else expresses it, because generally we don't have any question about the value of somebody else showing me love and compassion, somebody else showing me patience, somebody else showing me generosity. We don't have any problem with thinking those things are valuable, because it's for me. The issue is when I start to look at somebody who needs a bit of caring concern and, sorry mate, I'm too busy. You know, look, you know, I'd love to, but I think Married at First Sight is on, you know. Or, yeah, look, could you ring back later? It's, I think Brad is upset or whatever, you know. You know, like we have to examine just how little we are willing to, you know, repay the kindness of others, and that's something to consider. You know, how reluctant we are, how easily we find reasons. You know, what I called last week the blockers. You know, these internal things that block us. Even if we convince ourselves that love and compassion is really valuable, that we find that internally there's something, you know, our own logic, our own reasoning, our rationalizations just somehow prevent us from doing that. And certainly from the Buddhist point of view, this stems from a self-centeredness, a very, like an excessive self-centeredness. So the process to start to weaken that is to have some awareness, you know, is to try to generate an awareness of those processes that go on in our mind, you know, an awareness of those blockers, of that rationalizing, the thinking, to actually try to become aware of it, and to make that happen, to have that awareness. Meditation is sort of like the byproduct, although it's not a byproduct, it's actually the real product of meditation, is that in the non-meditation time we can have a lot more awareness of our own state of mind, our own thinking. So in what they call the post-meditation time, we can develop qualities of mindfulness and introspection that enable us to see a lot more clearly what's going on in our own mental processes. And if there's any one reason why, you know, if we examine our behaviour, we see such contradictions. You know, we see this, that we really value somebody showing me caring, compassion, and love, but I don't give it to anybody. I don't readily show that same compassion or care or patience to anybody else. So to become aware of that, we require this sort of self-awareness, mindfulness and introspection. And that is mainly developed through meditation. So that's a very good motivation to have when we enter a meditation practice. We're not just looking for 2 minutes of peace and calm. We are looking to train and develop our mind to have the qualities, to have the awareness, to have this mindfulness and introspection, and to be able to have full control and awareness of our mental thinking, and then to progress to having control over our thinking, instead of our thinking just being a whole series of distractions and a whim following all sorts of different inputs and sensory experiences, and our mind is just carried away with a whole succession of just indulgent distractions. So not to be like that, but instead to have a self-awareness that enables us to actually direct our mind to the experience that we want to have. So we will do some meditation, and we'll just focus on the breathing. So find a comfortable position. Adopt a comfortable position, and also a comfortable position with your mind. So we fix the body. We fix the body in this position, and then we fix the mind. So the Buddhist definition of meditation is quite specific in that it means to hold a virtuous object. So a virtuous object is one that results in happiness. So fixating on anger or fixating on your enemy is, even though it's a fixation, it's not meditation, because it doesn't meet this requirement of holding the virtuous object. So here we are going to actually focus on the breath. So the breath itself is actually a neutral object. It's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. But because it's neutral, when we hold the breath with the intention of holding this one object, as I was saying last week, we're going to focus on one object, the breath. That in focusing on one object, all other thoughts, all other distractions cease. And so the meditation is holding one object with the intention of ceasing all of the distraction, all of the mental machinations, the past, present, future, the little storytelling, the daydreaming, the negativities. So we're holding one object, the breath. And so in that process, it becomes a virtuous action. So for the 2 minutes or so of each meditation, 100% focus on the breath. Absolutely holding just the breath coming in and out, and ideally focusing on the awareness of the breath coming in and out. So become aware of what's in your mind, and let all of the external thoughts, distractions, past, present, future, outside, everything, let them all just fall away, until your mind has like no thought in it whatsoever. And then place your attention on the breath. And just for a couple of minutes, let's focus completely on the breath. Relax your concentration a little bit and just examine what happened in your meditation. So check on your experience during the meditation. If you were distracted or sleepy or daydreaming, fantasizing something. So look at all of the things that happened during the meditation and see that these are actually the obstacles to having good focus, good concentration. You know, these are the actual obstacles to being able to generate good mindfulness and alertness. So we'll enter the meditation again, so exactly the same, and go into the meditation with a very strong determination to keep the focus 100% on the breath. Bring your concentration back to the room. So, once similar to last week, we'll now do a very short analytical meditation. So this is the two types of meditation are these sort of what's called concentration meditations and then analytical meditation. So in the analytical meditation, we pick a point or a topic and we use our intelligence to examine that topic, that question. So tonight, I've been talking about this idea of repaying the kindness or recognizing the kindness. So I would like you to just spend a couple of minutes examining whether that's true, that we can see all these very mundane examples in our daily life as examples of kindness, So use your own logic and also the approach that I talked about. So you just examine, in your own, using your own mental processes, just whether you think that's true, whether it's reasonable, and just sort of check the logic within your own experience. So let's say for 2 minutes or so, examine, is it true that these mundane worldly things that people do for us are expressions of kindness or not? So let's just spend a couple of minutes thinking about that. So you can include examples like somebody that stops at a red light and lets you through, somebody that keeps to their side of the road, somebody that serves you in the supermarket, your mother, all of the people that keep this society running. And then just bring your concentration back to the room. So just to encourage you that there's no right or wrong answer in a way in these meditations, but the point is to engage in this process, because over time your view or your understanding will change. So, so I'm not asking you to agree with these points, but the process of investigation is really important. To listen to these ideas, investigate and examine and reflect on them in relation to your own life. And although an example of somebody keeping to their side of the road you might think is a trivial example, all you have to do is drive down a road and think, if any of those people did not respect the idea of staying on their side of the road, what that would mean for you. And so then to start to sort of see the logic that it is actually a great kindness that other drivers do follow those conventions. Okay, so we've got some time for some questions or discussion, if anybody... Yeah, so Veronica's making the point that when you do behave with kindness, that it is an immediate reward. Yeah, it makes you feel much better. Good. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just having trouble with the concept of actions requiring an intention, and if we perceive it as being kind and that person doesn't have an intention of it being kind, is it like a full action?
Yeah, so the question is about whether we can perceive an action as kind even if that person does not have kindness as their motivation. And you think not?
I'm not sure. That's why I asked the question. I think, I guess we are a collective organism. So if we perceive it as being kind, then I don't know. Because a lot of people act in a seemingly kind way to get there, to benefit themselves.
Do you mean the sort of have a nice day type of kindness?
Like it's a social expectation, and if they didn't do that, there would be consequences for them.
So the question is about whether the motivation of kindness is required in the other person or not. It's a good question. So let's go to the other consideration, and that is whether you receive benefit or not, independent of the person's state of mind. Okay. Would you accept that you can be benefited even if somebody is doing, let's say, nominally a mindless action?
In the short term, yes, but I wonder whether there's like ramifications in the future if it's not like a pure action. Like if maybe it seems to be benefiting, but ultimately it's not.
Well, look, certainly from a Buddhist point of view, the motivation of the person is of immense benefit in regard to the consequences for that person themselves, but also for the receiver. So even the example of me sitting here, I could quite easily look up a whole lot of books and generate a talk which is 100% pure content. But if my mind has no intention to benefit, those words go out, you can hear exactly the same words, but from a Buddhist point of view, my motivation makes a difference. And your motivation as a listener also makes a difference. So you could have a class where I say all these words, but my motivation is poor, and then you as a listener, your motivation is poor, and the result then is poor. But it's possible that your motivation as a listener could be very pure. And so then, in a way, even despite my motivation, you can receive great benefit because of your motivation. So I think similarly, we can be in the supermarket, and my motivation is to view the person's actions as kind. And so for me, the consequence is great, wonderful experience of seeing the kindness of somebody else. Do you think that's possible?
I think that's called synthesizing happiness. Yeah, I think it is, but whether I guess you're analysing the situation, and some people could argue that you're analysing the situation the wrong way, like you're seeing it as a kind action, but it's actually not intended to be kind. And so is that just kind of pulling the wool over our eyes type of thing? I mean, I definitely see the benefit.
So does the reverse happen? Do we perceive some actions as harmful and unkind, but in truth they are great kindness? You know, like you're a doctor slapping you on the back or something like that, you know, somebody coming up and giving you a big belt on the back, and so you stop choking. You know, like there's many examples. A surgeon cutting you, you know, maybe your mother scolding you, and so then you never again do that particular behaviour. It can appear to be it can appear to be harsh and unkind, but in fact great kindness. Anyway, we can analyse, there's a lot of different scenarios we can start to think about, but ideally the best circumstance is, you know, like here, if I can have a kind, pure motivation and you can have a kind, pure motivation, then there's great benefit. But we can check those the other circumstances, you know, and see that, you know, it's not quite so black and white, maybe. Yeah, behind you first, yeah.
It seems like you're almost redefining kindness, not necessarily to be an intentionally generous action, but almost a new paradigm or new perspective to view what you experience and view other people's actions. So it's more centered on you and how you see what happens around you, rather than other people's motivations.
Yeah, so the observation is that this is a new paradigm of viewing kindness. So maybe that's true, and maybe that's because our previous paradigm of thinking that the other person has to be manifestly kind for me to view it as something beneficial, maybe that analysis is incorrect. That's something to consider. So here, the consideration is that the mere fact that the food is on the shelf in the supermarket, and the mere fact that the checkout person can swipe it and give it to me, that is a kindness. So that's something to examine. And the way you can examine is to think that they swipe it and put it back on the shelf. You know, you don't get it. You don't get the can of soup. You walk out empty-handed. So then this is a way you can examine whether you think it's... And so you're right, it is in a way transforming our demand that somebody has to have the pure motivation of kindness for it to be kindness. So I would say, absolutely, that's an incorrect restriction on what we view as kindness. You know, the affection that a cat might give its owner because the owner gives it food, you know, it's still kindness, even though it may be conditional on feeding it every day. It may be conditional on that. You stop feeding the cat and the cat will go somewhere else. But while you're feeding the cat and while the cat is responding to you with affection, that affection is kindness, even though it's conditional. But does the cat possess this fantastically kind mentality? Maybe not, but it is still kindness. Anyway, that's just to think about. These are points to think about. That do we have to demand that the other person has an incredibly kind attitude for me to view it as kindness? I think not. Maria?
So in that sense, how they say sometimes we can practice recognizing someone as a teacher that they're introducing us because it gives us an opportunity to learn patience or overcome something from overreacting and things like this. So that really transforms me seeing them as a teacher and not having a pickup. It really transforms my work. Whether they understand or not, I think they already listening.
Yeah, so Maria's just alluding to a point that's made in a lot of Buddhists' sort of approach on this topic, and that is that, for me to develop the quality of patience, I will not generate patience on the basis of the people who praise me, who suck up to me, who tell me I'm great, who tell me all these sort of things. I will not generate patience in that circumstance. I will only generate patience in the circumstance where somebody is challenging me, is abusing me, is annoying me, causing me difficulties, etc. And so if we think about the possibility of being a fully developed person with the fully developed qualities of generosity, of tolerance, of morality, of patience, then to develop patience, I actually require somebody to challenge my patience. And so for that reason, there's a thought transformation practice where you view the person who tempts you to become angry. Let's say we call it that. They're tempting you to become angry by their words or their actions. So we view that person as a great teacher because they enable me to generate patience. And so then it's a thought transformation practice that we value that person as very rare and precious. So particularly in the context of somebody like a great lama or somebody like that who has really developed kindness and has really developed love and compassion for others, then everybody that comes into their sphere of engagement will be, oh, you're fantastic. You're so kind, you're so nice, I really like you. None of them challenge the patience. So particularly in that context, then the person who does challenge, who tempts them to be angry, who challenges them in a way that can be annoying or disturbing or whatever, you can view them as something very precious because particularly in that case, they're very rare and precious and they enable the person to generate patience. So that's the sort of logic of this thought transformation practice, that even that person who is really annoying you is so valuable because they're enabling you to practice patience and to generate patience. Yeah. All right, so thank you very much. We'll just finish with a dedication meditation. So thanks for all those questions. Questions are good because they sort of can reveal other points. So it's really useful. So just think, all of us coming together it really is something rare and precious, something very unusual, and everybody's effort in meditating, listening, talking, contributing, that this is really something very rare and precious. And that takes the form of a ball of white light in the centre of the room, and then bring that ball of white light above yourself so that it's above your own head. And then imagine that it pours down into you through the crown of your head and completely fills your body with light and completely fills your mind, making your mind very open and clear, very expansive. So imagine that your mental state is like very open, clear, bright, completely free of any disturbances. Imagine all of this light then gathers into a big egg at your heart, a big white light egg at your heart, radiating, so it's radiating light. And then think of everybody else here in the room, thinking that everybody here wants happiness and wants to be free of suffering, but unfortunately they lack happiness and they experience suffering. They experience unsatisfactory circumstances. Imagine then rays of light go out from you to everybody else, filling their bodies with light and filling their minds with this clear, delightful, open mind, so that all of their suffering is dispelled and they're completely filled with happiness. Then to your family and your close ones, wherever they are, exactly the same. They want happiness and they want to be free from suffering, but unfortunately they lack happiness and they experience suffering. So imagine rays of light go out to them, bring them happiness, and completely free them from all of their mental and physical sufferings. And similarly, even to those people you don't like, your enemies, the people that annoy you, and to every living being. We can imagine every living being in front of us wanting happiness, wanting to be free from suffering, but lacking happiness and enduring suffering. Imagine the rays of light go out like this to every living being. And with those rays of light go out, have a really strong wish that they have happiness, like a really strong wish that they have happiness, and a really strong wish that they be free of suffering. And it's this wish which actually drives the light going out to every living being. And then imagine all of that light returns and dissolves back into yourself, dissolving back into this egg of white light at your heart. Completely comes back and absorbs into yourself. And generate a strong sense of joy and delight at having been able to do this. Yeah, so thank you very much. I'll continue on next week, and yeah, so I look forward to seeing you all there then, and happy contemplating.